Bianca, I direct the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute, which is one of the co-organizers of this event, along Just Peace Advocates. And I'm speaking to you from Montreal, or Jojage, which is on the territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka people. I also want to acknowledge and thank our co-organizing, our co-sponsors, Paju and Defund Racism. So our chat's going to be open for this discussion. We encourage you to say hi, let us know where you're tuning in from. And as usual, please keep all your messages free from any harmful commentary. After hearing from panelists, we're also going to have a brief Q&A, so you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions. We are also going to be putting this up on YouTube afterwards, and I would encourage people to share this on Facebook for a wider audience. So today's event is in solidarity with those who've been charged and maligned for allegedly putting up posters on Indigo Bookstore's storefront in Toronto. And we're going to hear more about that shortly. It's about peace activists being criminalized for Palestine solidarity. And it's also about challenging the charitable status of the HESEG Foundation for Lone Soldiers, which supports non-Israelis joining the Israeli military and other forms of assistance to the Israeli military. It's also about the role that registered charities, Canadian charities, play in subsidizing projects in Israel, a major financial boost with our tax dollars that amounts to one of Canada's most important contributions to Palestinian dispossession. But even more, today's webinar is about building opposition to Canada's role in enabling Israel's genocide in Gaza. Words are no longer sufficient to describe the horrors that are taking place from moment to moment that we are witnessing live, the massacres, the forced displacement, the utter destruction, which have thus far received our government's consent. So without further delay, I'm going to introduce our first speaker of the afternoon, Rachel Small, who is the Canada organizer for World Beyond War and a member of Jews Say No to Genocide. Rachel is a longtime community organizer. She's been active in local and international social and environmental justice movements for over a decade. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Bianca, and thanks for putting together this event and to all the co-organizers. So as Bianca mentioned, my name is Rachel Small. I'm the Canada organizer with World Beyond War. We're a global grassroots anti-war movement. We seek to abolish war, the military-industrial complex, the war machine. World Beyond War is also a member of the new coalition that's been set up in Toronto over the past few months called Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition. This coalition came together because there were already thousands of Jews in Toronto who were coming together in demonstrations, in conversations, at events, on the street, to stand in solidarity with Palestinians who have a huge community in Toronto. And we were in position as Jewish people in the city to be grieving alongside everyone else in Toronto, and specifically wanted to join in the grief and mourning for all of the Israelis and Palestinians who have been killed over the past few months, and felt that our Jewish grief can and does extend to every life that has been lost. We feel very powerfully that the forces that actually endanger Jews are white supremacy and fascism, not our Palestinian neighbors in this city. We know.
Oh, Rachel, you've been muted. I'm not sure what's happening.
Wow, that's strange.
And we're also hearing a bit of background noise. I think it's coming from your.
Wow, that is great. Wonderful.
Yes, I believe someone muted me because there is indeed background noise here. If it becomes a problem, I can try and move rooms. I'm sorry about that. There's multiple things happening in this space. We as Jews organizing in Toronto are very clear about what are the forces that actually endanger us. And it's certainly not our Palestinian neighbors in Toronto. We feel very strongly that fighting anti-Semitism, anti-Palestinian racism, and Islamophobia are all part of the same fight, and they're part of our fight. The reason Juicy No to Genocide has been connected to the particular
Right, thank
topic
you
we're
so
talking
much,
about here
Emma.
today,
And
and
my
has stood up very
apologies for
publicly
the
and
late
vociferously in
start. It's
support
totally
of
my fault.
the Peace 11.
Um,
There are several reasons. First of all, while this coalition is brand new in Toronto,
I'm going
members
to
of it have been involved
share
in
my
protesting
screen.
Indigo for well over a
And,
decade for the same issues,
so
for the same
apologies
reasons that are
for
being
the
brought up
background
today.
noise. share
I hope you can
office
hear me
space
okay.
with someone who's
It's okay.
also
It's,
doing
we can
webinars
definitely
after
hear
the
another
talk.
person speaking
So
fairly
it will
loudly in
last
the
long.
background. Is it possible to, is it possible to ask them to reduce
thanks
the
for
volume
signing up for Fox
or
News.
let them know that you're on a webinar?
I'm so sorry. If you can give me just 10 seconds, I will move
And,
locations. My sincere apologies about that. We're having an internet connection here in my neighborhood in Toronto, so everyone is in the same room where there is internet. My apologies. To continue where I left off, the reason that the Juicy No to Genocide Coalition is deeply involved in the topic at hand is not only because members of our coalition have been involved in protesting Indigo for well over a decade. This is a long-standing campaign that the Jewish community in Toronto has been a key part of, but also because these actions that have resulted in the criminalization of the Peace 11 have been dubbed as hate-motivated mischief, are being labeled by the media as an anti-Semitic vile attack. And we felt the need to absolutely, unequivocally, and immediately reject this characterization and to say loud and clear that denouncing Reisman and her pro-IDF actions is neither anti-Semitism nor a hate crime, but the real injustice we're seeing here is the effort to silence and criminalize any form of solidarity with Palestinians. And so we, as the Juicy No to Genocide Coalition, categorically refuse to be silent as a genocide rages on, sometimes in our name as Jews. And we certainly won't be intimidated out of naming CO Heather Reisman's support for Israeli occupation forces, as we have documented for many years, and as I know people will speak to on this webinar, that she has frankly made it her core mission through her foundation to provide direct financial support to Canadian citizens to join the Israeli military. So what we instead are seeing with these arrests is a clear effort by police to target and repress Palestine solidarity peace activists, even at a moment where the majority of people in Canada are, of course, calling for a ceasefire, are, of course, recognizing the horrific war crimes being carried out by the Israeli military. These 11 peace activists who have been charged with serious criminal offenses by the police at this point are our friends, our community organizers, our teachers, our legal workers, our labor activists, our parents, our beloved and deeply respected peace activists in our community. And we call for all these charges to be immediately dropped. I also wanted to highlight the extraordinary nature of these arrests, which have really struck many of us as just horrific examples of police overreach, of intimidation, and frankly, a waste of city resources. A really powerful article by The Breach highlighted that just the raid alone, where 6 homes in the middle of the night were simultaneously raided by, in many cases, 8 officers each, that's an operation of many hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's just that morning. That's not including everything else that's involved in this criminalization. Specifically, I wanted to highlight that in many of these houses, again, in the middle of the night, police knocked and then burst through the doors. They broke many of the peace activists' doors, and after they were removed, left these doors just open for many hours while the folks had been arrested and brought into custody. All residents of the houses that were raided, including those who were not being charged, were handcuffed, including, in some cases, elderly family members who do not speak English. Parents were handcuffed in full view of their children. In all cases, all of their laptops and cell phones, including those provided by their employers, were seized. These have not been returned. So many of these peace activists have struggled to be able to complete their employment duties since one of their cars was impounded for 3 days. I highlight all this to point out that this is not how peace activism is typically policed in Toronto. This is an extraordinary example of I would say police violence, and is clearly being done in an attempt to, as we've already said, to detract from the incredible Palestine solidarity organizing that is happening in the city, to create a chilling effect, to scare people. And I think it's so important that there are events like this today, and that as we've seen, the protest movement in Toronto is only growing, and that people are not going to be frightened out of turning away from the horrors that we're continuing to witness every single day in Gaza right now. We are not going to be distracted by the police violence and turn away from the suffering of millions deprived of food and water. Frankly, the literal blood that's running down streets in Gaza, where cities have been reduced to rubble. Every one of the peace activists, when they were released from custody to a crowd that was waiting to greet them, immediately talked about how this is a fight to free Palestine, and how they were steady in their resolve to continue in support of that movement, regardless of this effort at criminalization. I wanted to say that the Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition held a press conference in front of the Indigo bookstore last week. If anyone would like to hear some of the powerful speeches that were made there, they're at worldbeyondwar.org/peace11, including some very powerful statements by Naomi Klein, who addressed Heather Reisman directly as a fellow writer, as someone who also works in defense of literature and as part of that industry, and what does it mean for her at the head of such an important bookstore empire in Canada to be suppressing free speech. And I would encourage everyone to read those statements directly, but also because one of the arrestees herself made an incredible statement as part of that press conference. I just wanted to share one brief quote from it. This is from Dr. Leslie Wood, an associate professor of sociology at York University. And yes, one of the 11 peace activists who was arrested. She says, as someone who grew up proud but private about their Jewishness, to be labeled an anti-Semite is a horrible thing. My great-grandparents fled the pogroms of Poland. Nazis killed members of my family. My 95-year-old father survived the anti-Semitism in Britain during World War II. My father taught me that the history of the Holocaust meant never again for anyone, that our history, the history of the Jewish people, meant that one must fight for justice. So I must do so now, knowing that some will say, I have no right to speak. On Wednesday at 5:30 a.m., 7 police officers broke down the door of our home and dragged my partner and I out of bed. We were cuffed and our house was searched. What were they searching for? They ignored the menorah. They ignored the song sheet from Jews Against the Genocide lying on the kitchen table. Instead, they took us to the station and charged us with hating Jews, with conspiracy, and now they are dragging our names through the mud. It is grotesque, Orwellian, to see hate crime charges used to stop those speaking out against hate, to see charges targeting those who work for a peaceful, freer, and more just future for both the Palestinians and the Israelis, that target those who believe that life is sacred. I know that they will continue to embody that lesson from the Holocaust that says never again for anyone. So again, that was part of a statement that was released by Dr. Leslie Wood, professor of sociology at York and one of the 11 peace activists who was arrested last week. Maybe I'll leave my comments off there, but I look forward to answering any questions in the Q&A. And one more thing that I should just add is that while we and they refuse to be distracted from our efforts by this blatant act of political criminalization that's happening in Toronto, there are significant legal costs in addressing these serious charges. And if people would like to support the Peace 11, support ongoing Palestinian solidarity work in Toronto and more broadly, I would encourage people to donate to the defense fund that has just been set up. It has been set up to support anyone in Toronto specifically who's being criminalized for their Palestine solidarity work. So that includes the Peace 11, but that also includes people who were arrested and given trespass tickets while blockading the weapons company Incas in Toronto, which is a company that sells arms to Israel. It also includes people who were arrested while staying inside Justice Minister Arif Virani's office and refusing to leave until he addressed the demand for a ceasefire. And it also includes people who have been charged with absurd things for interrupting the Giller Prize ceremony to expose the fact that Scotiabank has invested $500 million in Israel's biggest weapon company, Elbit. That's the biggest foreign investor in Elbit. So this is a collective effort to collectively defend our communities against the state's attack on our solidarity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Wow. The link to support Palestinian solidarity activists and the costs stemming from the criminalization of protest activities in solidarity with Palestine is in the chat. We're providing that. Please do contribute if you can. Thank you, Rachel, for your words today. Thank you for that great update on what has gone down, for naming and resisting these outrageous attacks, the overreach, the intimidation, the criminalization of activism, and the waste of resources that you so rightly named, and just how extraordinary this moment is. For more information about Jews Say No to Genocide, please do visit the website, and as well as World Beyond War, where Rachel works. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks also for your tremendous activism, courage, and clarity. So just to let everybody know, we are live on Facebook as well. We put that link in the chat. Please do help us to spread the word. We would like as many people as possible to be able to watch this, understand what's going on, and stand in solidarity as well. Our next speaker is Shane Martinez. Shane is a criminal and human rights lawyer and an adjunct professor at the Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto. In addition to this case, Shane's work around the Israeli occupation has included complaints to the Canada Revenue Agency regarding alleged shell charities being used to raise money for the Israeli military. He also privately prosecuted the first ever criminal case against a Canadian organization for its involvement in recruiting volunteers for the IDF. Welcome, Shane.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Bianca. And good afternoon to everybody watching. It's a great pleasure and honor, as always, to be alongside such knowledgeable and respected individuals on this panel. And I guess maybe I'll start today by providing a bit of a roadmap about what I'll be speaking on. So first, I'll try to give a brief overview of some of the law and policy as it applies to charities in Canada. Second, I'll describe some of HESEG's known activities. And third, I'll explain why it appears that those activities may be in violation of Canadian law and policy as it relates to charities. So let's start off with a review of the applicable charity law and policy in Canada. The truth of the matter is that we could really do a full semester law school seminar on this topic. So my remarks are going to be fairly specific and limited to only a few provisions that are most relevant to what we're talking about. Charities in Canada are primarily governed by federal laws and policies, and oversight is provided by the Canada Revenue Agency. Now, the key legal framework that we're talking about, it includes the Income Tax Act, which sets out the legal requirements for an organization to qualify as a registered charity in Canada. And the Income Tax Act outlines the conditions for charitable registration, the types of activities that qualify as charitable, and the tax benefits available to registered charities. We've also got something known as guidance documents on charities and giving, which provide detailed information on various aspects of charity law. And these documents offer guidance on topics such as registering a charity, fundraising, foreign activities, and so on. And similarly, there are policy statements and interpretation bulletins, which the CRA issues to provide additional clarification on specific issues related to charities. And together, these documents help interpret and apply the provisions of the Income Tax Act in the context of charitable organizations. And of course, in addition to statutory laws, we have common law principles and precedents, which are developed by courts and also influence the regulation of charities in Canada. The definition of charitable purposes and the public benefit test, for example, which I'm going to be talking about, are shaped in part by common law. So what ties all of this together? Well, the Charities Directorate of the Canada Revenue Agency is responsible for administering and enforcing the tax laws related to charities. And it reviews and approves applications for charitable registration. It monitors compliance with the Income Tax Act, and it takes enforcement action when that becomes necessary. And it's very important for charities in Canada to be aware of these legal frameworks so that they can comply with them, because a failure to comply with them can result in possible revocation of status or other penalties. So with that foundation in mind, let's move on to the question of how an organization gets charitable status. So to attain charitable status, an organization has to register with the CRA to enjoy tax privileges, such as issuing tax receipts to donors. An organization's purposes, as stated in its governing documents, must be exclusively charitable for it to be a registered charity. And there must be clear statements in governing documents about the purported charitable purpose, the means of providing the benefits, and who the eligible beneficiary group is exactly. And to be registered, an organization must be charitable at law, which means that its purposes have to fall within something known as the PEMSL categories. There are 4 PEMSL categories, and those are the relief of poverty, the advancement of education, the advancement of religion, and other community beneficial purposes. And please keep those in mind, especially advancement of education, because we're going to be coming back to that. When an organization's purpose falls into one or more of the PEMSL categories, then it can be said on its face that it may meet the public benefit requirements set forth by the CRA. However, beneficiaries must be the public at large, and we have to avoid undue exclusion of the public. It can't be too narrow. Who exactly is the beneficiary of these charitable endeavors. But even if an organization's purposes appear to be charitable, there are factors which can prevent registration or result in revocation, which include profit making, illegal purposes, and exceeding limits on political activities, or engaging in activities that are contrary to Canadian policy. And keep that in mind as well, because we're going to be coming back to that also. So let's continue now onto the HESEG Foundation, which is an organization with charitable status that was founded in Canada and which has been the subject, as Rachel noted, of boycotts for about the last 15 years or so on account of its ties to Israel's armed forces, specifically its support of lone soldiers. Lone soldiers, as some people may know, are individuals from Canada, the United States, or elsewhere who are not Israeli, but who volunteer for Israel's armed forces despite having no legal obligation to serve. And one of HESEG's primary stated purposes is to provide scholarships, fellowships, bursaries, and prizes to former soldiers who have served in Israel, who are enrolled or will enroll in vocation, undergraduate, or postgraduate studies at a recognized educational institution in Israel. Now, over the years, HESEG has sent many millions of dollars to cover the education costs of lone soldiers, which allows its donors to reap significant tax deductions at the expense of the Canadian public, of course, who never sees taxes paid on those amounts. Now, as recently as 2019, the HESEG Foundation reported that it received funding for its scholarships from HESEG. So what is HESEG exactly? So Unit 217 of the Israeli military is also known as HESEG, and it's an undercover commando unit within the Israeli military that is known for disguising itself and blending in with Palestinian populations in the occupied territory to carry out operations. Scholarships through the HESEG Foundation, which have been funded in part by HESEG, are based on financial need, but also excellence during Army service. And there's questions about what constitutes excellence during Army service, because for decades, HESEG has been the subject of international criticism for an array of alleged human rights violations. Going back to March 1997, the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, also known as B'Tselem, reported on its investigation into the killing of an individual by undercover HESEG soldiers, In 2011, US Senator Patrick Leahy proposed suspending assistance to Duvdevin, citing human rights violations. In 2013, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights reported instances of excessive force by the Israeli military, including an incident involving Duvdevin, where a bound detainee was kicked in the face. In 2015, the Palestinian prisoner advocacy organization Adamir reported abuses by Duvdevin, including arrests, shootings, and severe injuries to Palestinian individuals in detention. In June 2020, Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, reported that Duvdevin soldiers seeking to arrest a mentally disabled youth in the Al Fawar refugee camp shot a teenager named Zayed Kesia. They shot him 7 times, I believe, and he later died from his injuries. And in November 2020, an organization known as Physicians for Human Rights Israel jointly released a report with other human rights organizations, which featured candid testimonials from former Duvdevin soldiers about the raids they had participated in and the trauma that was routinely inflicted on innocent civilians. So let's turn now to why all of this may be a violation of the law. One might hear this and say, but isn't the advancement of education a legitimate charitable purpose under the PEMSL categories that you just described? So yes, it is. But as you may recall, that's not where the analysis ends. We have to look at not only the stated charitable purpose, but also at whether the purpose in question is compatible with Canadian public policy and whether there's truly a public benefit. And CRA policy states clearly that the charitable purposes of some organizations may result in benefit to the public, while at the same time producing some negative effects. Where such a conflict occurs, the public benefit shown to arise from the charitable purpose is typically evaluated against any harm that may also arise from the proposed activity. And in determining charitable purpose, we have to look to ensure that a substantial net benefit results. But there's more than that as well. Because according to the CRA's own guideline documents and also court rulings from the Federal Court of Appeal in Canada, the courts have stated that some activities may not be charitable when carried on in a different country. And they give a specific example, which is providing support to a foreign army. So the next question is this: does HESEG's funding of scholarships for lone soldiers amount to support for the armed forces of another country? And I would say that the facts speak for themselves on this point. Post-secondary education for individuals transitioning from military service to civilian life is a need that's already contemplated and addressed by the Israeli government. Israel's Ministry of Defense operates something known as the Foundation and Unit for Discharged Soldiers, which provides former soldiers with comprehensive assistance, including financial grants and so on. And Israeli media has reported that funding post-secondary education of soldiers has become a top priority of senior military officers because it will encourage soldiers to complete their army service. And in 2016, the Israeli military announced that it would be fully funding the academic studies of both combat and non-combat soldiers, including lone soldiers, upon discharge from the Israeli army. Israel 365 News reported that, in essence, the IDF is fully funding soldier studies. And as of 2020, the Israeli military continued to operate this scholarship fund for soldiers. So in light of this important context, what we see is that HESEG's funding of scholarships for lone soldiers appears to be a subsidization of a service provided by Israel's Ministry of Defense. And therefore, it's potentially support of a foreign army that's in violation of the income tax, in violation of common law and CRA guidelines. And I'd further suggest that financing the post-secondary education of those who have served in a foreign army on condition that they complete their military service, that's an activity which is potentially contrary to Canadian public policy, does not meet the public benefit requirement as stated by the CRA. So to conclude, Canada needs to take action now to examine situations where charities are incentivizing enlistment in a foreign army by funding military scholarships. Providing subsidized education to soldiers and former soldiers of foreign armies to recognize their military service does not confer a public benefit. And serious public policy concerns arise when the foreign army benefiting from such a scholarship program is at the center of an internationally condemned occupation, It's under investigation by the International Criminal Court, and it's accused of involvement in countless human rights abuses and war crimes, including allegations of genocide. And these concerns have to be immediately investigated and acted upon by the Compliance Division of the Charities Directorate if the legal framework for charities is to maintain any confidence from the Canadian public. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Thanks for laying all of this out so clearly for us and for so skillfully using your talents in the public interest. It's long past time for us to be talking about the activities of the HESEG Foundation and whether we should be subsidizing it. And if all of this is going to be on the front pages of our paper as well, let's talk about it. I also want to point people to an important action initiated by CFPI, Just Peace Advocates, and others calling on the Canada Revenue Agency to investigate the HESEG Foundation. Please do consider taking a minute to send a letter to the Canada Revenue Agency. The action is titled "No Subsidies for War Crimes." It's got a lot of traction there. In just the last couple of days, there are over 12,000 letters that have been sent by more than 4,000 people. So please do join them. We're providing you with that link, and please do share it as well. So next up, we have Karen Rodman. Karen is a human rights advocate and serves as executive director of Just Peace Advocates. Karen, among many other things, is also the founder of Palestine Just Trade. Welcome, Karen.
Thanks so much, Bianca, and very much my pleasure to join with you. As Bianca has already mentioned, taxpayer subsidization with donations from Canadian charities may well be Canada's most important contribution to the Palestinian dispossession. It's in that regard that Just Peace Advocates, working with others, started to look in more detail using the information that is available publicly on the Canada Revenue or CRA site, as well as through requesting and getting access to information requests. Over the years, charities in Canada have sent about $250 million a year to projects in Israel. And a number of those projects support the Israeli military, and including several other organizations with Duvetin that Shane just mentioned, but also some of those projects do support racist apartheid organizations and or illegal settlements, all things that are in contravention of the CRA regulations. A recent access to information request or ATIP request received by Just Peace Advocates indicated that over $10.5 billion have gone to other countries over the last 5 years. Now, at a 30% tax rate, and I'm sure that is too low, that would be more than $3 billion that is our taxpaying dollars that have gone to subsidize or have gone to from Canada to other countries. Each year, there are between 5,000 and 7,000 charities in Canada that are involved in sending funds to over 180 countries. So regardless of our conversation around Israel and possible war crimes, just the whole idea of how much money is going is certainly an area to look into in more detail. However, the access to information request from Canada Revenue Agency revealed that Israel received the highest amount of charitable donations from Canadian charities of any country. On average, over the last 5 years, over 11% of the funds reported donated to other countries by Canadian charities went to Israel, a country that has a GDP per capita equivalent or higher than Canada's. Over 200 charities in Canada each year from 2018 to 2021 reported sending money to Israel. And we'll be putting in, probably Bianca will be putting in some of the links with some of this information and some of the other links we can put in after so you can read more about that. Israel and the USA received the highest amount of charitable funds, with them jockeying as to which country received the most in any particular year from Canadian charities. Excuse me. As Shane has mentioned, Canadian charities are approved by the Canada Revenue Agency on the basis that organizations' purposes must be exclusively and legally charitable, and that the charity must be established for the benefit of the public or a sufficient segment of the public. The CRA specifically indicates that charitable status for Canadian organizations are for a few specific purposes, such as the relief of poverty, the advancement of education and religion, and purposes that are beneficial to communities in a way the law regards as charitable. A charity can carry on its own activities, so with its own staff or volunteers, or it can carry on those activities through an intermediary, such as a private contractor acting on its behalf. Whether it uses staff and its own resources or an intermediary, the Canadian charity must direct and control the use of those resources. A charity cannot act as a conduit to merely funnel resources to another organization that's not a qualified donor. So under the Canadian law, most activities are charitable in Canada, also are charitable in other countries or abroad. However, there are a few examples where the courts have stated that some activities that are charitable in Canada may not be charitable when carried out in another country. For example, the Canada Revenue Agency says that it is charitable to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of the Canadian Armed Forces. Now, while many of us might not feel that is ideal, and that is the Canada Revenue sort of guidelines and rules, but CRA does say it's not charitable to support an armed force in another country. So sort of leading on from some and adding to some of the things that Shane has mentioned with HESEG, certainly over the last several years, the Canada Revenue Agency has been requested to investigate a number of charities that appear to be donating to entities in Israel that are supporting illegal settlements, apartheid, racist organizations, and or the Israeli military. We're aware of about a dozen charities that send more than somewhere in around $100 million each year. It would depend on the year of funds to Israel. Also, requests have been made to investigate many other charities and charitable foundations that use these dozen charities as conduits. A recent request has confirmed that the reported donations to Israel has dropped significantly in 2022. There could be some reasons for this, but it showed that $130 million was sent to Israel in 2022 from about 140 charities. This is about $100 million drop from what was sent in 2021, and almost $200 million less than was sent in the year previous in 2020. There's about 40 less charities that are reporting sending money to Israel in 2022 than in the more recent years. So this will involve looking at things in a little bit more detail, but you can actually see from the access requests, the actual charities that provided money in 2022 and the entities that they provided them in the link that Bianca's just put in. Now, this might seem like there is some impact being made on the CRA and on maybe the organizations themselves, based on the fact there have been requests for investigation by the CRA and copies of many letters, some of which many of the folks probably on this webinar have sent to the CRA and to the Minister of National Revenue. However, the total numbers that come in the ATIP responses do not necessarily count for all the funds going to Israel, because a number of charities fail to provide the country they're sending their money to when they actually file their CRA returns. Over the last 5 years, there's actually $1 billion that's left Canada with no indication of the country it was destined to. This includes Canadian charities that have been sending money to entities in Israel. And based on our review of those charities not reporting countries, tens of millions of dollars, if not more, has been sent to Israel, but not reported as doing that by Canadian charities. So other organizations also sometimes provide funds in the form of scholarships, such as we've just been talking about in the information Shane provided, and also in operating funds. And these aren't necessarily captured in the amounts that appear in the total information from the ATIP request. I will mention one organization, just to give you a sense. It's a Jewish Heritage Foundation of Canada, and it failed to identify country codes for the recipients of their funding in 2022 based on the information we got from the ATIP request. This organization, founded in 1976, was what was considered a sleeper charity as recently as 2018, with no revenue, no expenses, no CRA financial filing based on information on the CRA site. But by 2022 was one of the 10 largest charities in Canada with almost $90 million of revenue. A year ago, two academics, Miles Howe and Paul Sylvester, did some work on what they called burner charities, and they tracked 3 burner charities: Gates of Mercy, Beth Olaf, and the Jewish Heritage Foundation. And they used data over a 2-decade period to outline a relationship of activity and dormancy, wherein once an active charity or active charity has lost its charitable status, then a subsequent burner charity is activated in its place. And you can read that in the link, about that in the link that Bianca's just put in. Several years ago, some of you will remember, information was included even in some of the mainstream media about the revocation of Beth Olaf and Gates of Mercy and their loss of charitable status. However, it is interesting. It seems that a number of other Canadian charities sending money to Israel also have been revoked since 2020. Our research is showing at least 10 other charities providing funds to Israel have been revoked by the CRA in the last couple of years. And most often, these revocations seem to be related to lack of direction and control over the charity's funds and a conduct of non-charitable activities. A recent report by Defund Racism about the settler organization Regaven shows that funds from Canada through an organization called Magbit Canada, which is the United Israel Appeal, or at least linked to the United Israel Appeal, and also Gates of Mercy, the charity that was revoked, actually helped to establish Regaven, and that Mizrachi of Canada is at the forefront, also continues to support Regaven. Regaven is at the forefront of efforts to ethnically cleanse and forcibly displace Palestinians. Requests for investigations were sent earlier this year to CRA to investigate Mizrachi and the Jewish Heritage Foundation. Halid may talk a bit about those. He was involved in some of that work, and other Canadian charities that appear to be supporting the Israeli military and other settler organizations. There certainly has been strong interest, with over 30 organizations joining in this call for an investigation into such Canadian charities that are supporting war crimes. You can check more information, as I've said, on the various work in the links provided. And if you are interested in helping with some of the research, you could certainly please be in touch. Certainly, activities that include colonization, war crimes, racism, and genocide are not charity. And so we will continue to ask the Canada Revenue Agency to investigate charities that appear to be supporting the Israeli military and illegal settlements. And so please do watch for more information as it becomes available. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for that really clear presentation. It's incredible how much research you've been able to do. There are a lot of links there. I'm going to try my best. Some of them didn't link up, so I'm going to try my best to just put them in again, the ones that didn't work out. There's a lot of really important information there. The numbers are pretty staggering in their scope, and there's so much education and action that needs to be done around this. We have the power to do something around this, specifically because if CRA regulations are being violated, in many ways, this is really low-hanging fruit. So thanks again, Karen, for your superb research and determination and being able to find all of this out and outline all of this for us. The next speaker of the afternoon is Khaled Muammar. Khaled was the former Palestinian, Khaled is a Palestinian Canadian and former national president of the Canadian Arab Federation. Welcome, Khaled. Oh, you're still on mute. Well, let me see if I can help. Yes, perfect.
Hello, hi, Ben. Thank you very much. I would like by starting to say that we should deal with the behavior of the police, which was really repugnant. And there is a reason for the way the police behave. And it goes back many years ago, because I recall that back in March 2005, a police delegation from Ontario was invited by pro-Israel lobbies groups, including the Canadian Jewish Congress and others. And their trip was paid by the government of Israel and by El Al also. And the purpose of that trip was to take these, one of them was the Ontario Police Commissioner, the Commissioner of the Ontario Police and his Vice President and other important people from the police force who went to Israel on this free trip, where they actually were trying to learn how the Israeli police deal with the Palestinians. And they learned very well, as we can see from what happened in November 23rd, because they went after these people who were protesting peacefully outside of the Indigo. They went after midnight, stormed into their homes, stole their possessions, mistreated them. And this is exactly how the Israeli police deals with the Palestinians who they suspect of being critical of Israel within Israel proper and in the occupied West Bank. So unfortunately, our police, at least in Ontario, have learned these violent tactics of the Israeli police and are practicing them now against any Canadian who expresses opposition to Israel. And they also misuse their power to charge them with hatred based on religious reasons, which is false. Because in the case of the Indigo 11, at least one of them, Professor Leslie Wood, she's a Jewish professor from York University, and yet she was charged with anti-Semitism, which is another problem caused by the equating criticism of Israel with hatred of Jews. And that comes from the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which where 7 of the examples of that definition equate criticism of Israel with hatred of Jews. So this is the tactic now that's being used to suppress the growing understanding of the Canadian public about the crimes of war crimes and crimes against humanity being committed by Israel. So anyone who criticizes Israel is being charged now with anti-Semitism. And the police force, which was trained since 2005 by Israeli police, is using that tactic to intimidate and threaten people and harass them. So this is a serious thing. And what's also serious is it's not only that they are trying to curtail freedom of speech, but they are also promoting hatred of anybody who criticizes Israel, even if you're Jewish, and specifically people who belong to minority groups like Blacks, Muslims, anybody who doesn't look like European can be attacked and say you are anti-Semitic because you're criticizing Israel. So that's a dangerous thing. And it's dangerous for Jews specifically because by equating Israel with Judaism, you are saying that this is a country which has been found by major human rights groups and UN groups guilty of committing war crimes and crimes against humanity, collective punishment, genocide, ethnic cleansing. By equating Israel with Jews, you are now blaming Jews for the crimes that Israel has been found guilty by the UN and human rights groups. So that's a serious thing that should be dealt with immediately and strongly, not only for the sake of pro-Palestinian rights, but also for stopping the promotion of hatred against anybody who criticizes Israel. Now, as was explained earlier, HESEG Foundation, which was started in 2005, and we in the Kenya Arab Federation actually started a campaign against them even at that time in 2006. I recall we had a meeting once with the publisher of the Toronto Star, John Hendrick, who was at that time a board member. And we went to tell him, you know, you are mistaken. You are sitting on this organization, which is really sending, you know, Canadians to serve in this, encouraging Canadians to go and work in the Israeli army, and this is not good. Since then, you know, that organization has been doing this thing, which violates the Foreign Enlistment Act, because what they're doing is they are encouraging people to join the Israeli army by telling them, after you serve, we're going to provide you scholarship to do your education in Israel. So they are really inciting people, Canadians, to join the Israeli army, which is contrary to the Foreign Enlistment Act. And this happens not only through the HESEG Foundation, as was mentioned earlier, there are other organizations. There's one called SAR-L. There's also the Tannenbaum Shat, which brings you know, IDF soldiers to speak to students in Jewish schools to encourage them to join the Israeli army. So they are violating the Foreign Enlistment Act, which says Canadian groups cannot encourage people to join a foreign army. And that's a serious, it's serious, not only because it's violating the Foreign Enlistment Act, also it's serious because it's involving Canadians in criminal activity for which they could be charged in the future. Because these people who go serve in the Israeli army are normally stationed in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and other places, and they are engaging in acts of violence against the occupation inhabitants. And we have to understand that this situation is even worse now, because prior to the election of the Netanyahu government, there were lots of violations being done by the Israeli army in the West Bank. But since then, we have now a cabinet which has a minister in charge of national security, who is a Kahanist, and we have also a minister of finance in charge, a minister in charge of the civil administration in the West Bank, Bezalel Smotrich, who also is a fascist religious Zionist. So both of these ministers are giving free hand to the Israeli army in the West Bank to do whatever they think serves the settlers. And the settlers are now being armed to do whatever they want, attacking communities in the West Bank, dispossessing people, and they are backed by the military. So Canadians who go and serve in the Israeli army are really involved in war crimes and crimes against humanity if they're positioned in those places in the West Bank. So in total, we have a situation in Canada where the reaction of the pro-Israel lobby is becoming very vicious because they are realizing that the public opinion, for the first time, there is strong understanding of what is happening in Palestine, and the support for the Canadian public for the Palestinian rights against occupation, against racism is increasing, and they fear that slowly the pressure will mount on the politicians to change their policy, which has so far been fully supportive of Israel. And this is why now they are using all the tools at their hands, people like the police force, unfortunately, which was trained by Israel, and a government of Doug Ford, which is very right-wing and supportive of Israel, and that accused people who demonstrated in rallies of being haters. The Canadians who are demonstrating hate injustice, but they love equality, they love freedom, and they love justice. So we should make sure that we expose this campaign, which is based on misinformation, which is based on confusing criticism of Israel with criticism of Jews, which is hurting not only Jews, but anybody who criticizes Israel. So I think the change is happening. The public change has happened, but we now have to change the institutions which are still following orders from the government. Unfortunately, a government we have which talks about equality and justice, international law, but it is supporting international law violations by Israel. Recently, Canada voted against a resolution against settlements, which Canada says are illegal, yet it votes against any resolution condemning settlements. But the pressure is rising, and hopefully, if it continues, we can make inroads into Canadian policy in action, not only in words, because Canada so far talks about justice and human rights, international law, but they are violating in practice all of those things when it comes to what is happening in Palestine and what crimes Israel is committing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Khaled. Thank you for speaking to this moment and the need for action above words. Also for clarifying, the goals of the activists who are supporting Palestine, and for underscoring the changes that we're seeing, some of the positive changes that we're seeing in terms of public opinion, but the need to transform our institutions to better reflect the will of the people. Up next, we have Mohammed Huraini, who's speaking to us from Masafar Yatta in the occupied West Bank, and he is representing youth of Samud, who are part of Defund Racism. Welcome, Mohammed.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for all the audience who's hearing us. So I want to share with you about the daily life we have been facing by the Israel occupation in Masafar Yatta. So which the people who don't know about Masafar Yatta is a community which have 33 villages and facing the forced eviction policy and the ethnic cleansing by the Israel occupation since the declaration in the early 80s by the occupation court when they declared as Musafariat as a firing zone military base for the army. So like I mean, we born under occupation, and we have seen all of the violations around us. So our main like human rights have been denied by the Israel occupation, like Israel by its settlers who's like around us. They have been attacking us and terrorizing the people around. I mean, and also like there's a bit the settler colonialism by like establishing settlements on the Palestinian lands. And I want to also, in that point, I want to focus on some of the organizations that Karen mentioned. Ragavim, that's the main organization that focus in order to evacuate the people and demolishing their homes. How, let's say, like if you want to understand how it's like this organization Ragavim every day, like they are following even the Palestinians movement in their homes. There is no security in your house by the drones that they like fly it up your house. If you build anything on your own on your own land, if you want to do at least a living room for yourself, for your family, or for your children, this will be in the second day, or maybe in the same day you will have a demolition order. So this organization is working hardly in order to to push hardly on the people and put pressure to put them in a risk to not living, to like evacuate them from their homes. And me and my group, they're like one of the groups who's like based on Ragavim, Defend Racism organization, in order to bring awareness about the situation in Masafriata and all the West Bank, and to bring awareness for the people who's like donating for like this charity, for like these organizations who's like supporting the apartheid and the ethnic cleansing policy that the occupation is committing. So as like we like as Karen says, like she mentioned many organizations that support the apartheid, and like I mean, this is what like I want to send to you by this webinar, and just to give you an idea, and for the rest for you to take action in order to do some response and some thing that can help the situation on the ground. I mean, during this period we have been passing, the settlers have been like the violation settler have been raised. Like the settler came in your house and threatening you by the guns and demolishing your houses, blocking all the entrances, like banning the movement around the villages. This is like a war crime, and every day like there's a violations against the Palestinian in whole the West Bank, not just in my community. So I'm inviting everyone who's just hearing us on this webinar, so just to understand and to even search more and share more about what's happening in Palestine, in the West Bank, and on Gaza, so to at least to show the reality of what's going on here. I mean, Israel like work hardly in order to push on us as like a group, as a human rights activist on the ground, by arresting, by threatening every day, by like anything that they could do against us, to not share the reality about what's going on. But I mean, we have we're the new generation, we're like the new youth for fight for the change, for this war, for like stopping the injustice that we have been passing through.
Thank you so much, Muhammad, for speaking to us and for taking this time during an incredibly difficult time to outline the work that you're doing, as well as the war crimes that are happening in your community and across the West Bank. Thank you for these calls to action, and for the call to share more, to share the reality of what's going on. Really underscores the importance of protecting and standing in solidarity with activists in Palestine, but also here. And I do want to take a moment to just let people know that they can find out more about Youth of Samud, as well as Defund Racism. We've put those links in the chat. Please do find out about their important work and support them. To people who've asked, this will be recorded and will be available on YouTube. And so we'll be emailing this out to everybody who's on the chat and who registered. Also want to take just a moment again to acknowledge the depth of Canada's complicity in Palestinian dispossession. CFPI does have a webinar, The Innumerable Ways Canada Supports Israeli Apartheid, which folks can check out as well for some other ways in which that's happening. And I also want to draw your attention, heed the words of Khaled, action is even more important than words. So let's take action, please. We do have one that you could take, no subsidies for war crimes. The letter writing campaign is in the chat as well. Thanks again to Muhammad. Muhammad was the last speaker of the afternoon. And now we're going to take a couple of questions. We don't have very many. I feel like that speaks to the deep clarity that we all have coming out of this discussion. So one of the first things is, I think I'll direct this towards Karen. Folks are asking whether it's possible to get an email with the links or some kind of document that we could send out perhaps to all registrants with the links. Is that possible?
Yes, that should be fine. The one link had a lot of links already into it, so we could create one link. And then I think, Bianca, you'll probably send the recording out to those who have registered, correct? So
Yes.
a link could be provided in that recording with all of the other links, if that'll work for folks.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I'm seeing there are even more links in the chat. Rachel's just posted about the speeches that were made at the recent press conference for the Peace 11 from Dr. Leslie Wood, Naomi Klein, and others. We have a question here around what the peace activists were arrested for exactly. So a few people want to know, what were the allegations? Maybe I'll start with you, Shane.
Sure. So I guess maybe before answering it, I'll just say, although I'm involved in the case, I'm not here today in that capacity. None of us here today are speaking on behalf of any of the accused people or their counsel. But the issue that, or I should say the alleged events underlying the charges, it's been reported on quite extensively in the media. There's a number of articles out there, some good reporting by Rabble and other outlets. But in a nutshell, what ended up happening allegedly is that last month, posters and red paint were said to have been found at one of the Indigo bookstores in Toronto. The posters made reference to the CEO of Indigo and made it clear that there was a link between her and HESEG. So in a nutshell, that's what's alleged to have happened, and people were ultimately targeted by the police for arrest as a result of their investigation, and that case is still before the courts right now. I'll just say as well that they are allegations. Anybody that has been charged has the presumption of innocence, and it appears to be based on statements that have been made that the charges are being defended vigorously.
Thank you, Shane. We have a question from an audience member who would like to know about the role of Heather Reisman, whether these charges were made at Heather Reisman, Indigo CEO's request, and also whether the charges, which were then increased and had added on to, trumped up, whether that was also made at Reisman's request. Is there anyone that can speak to that? Yeah, Rachel?
So again, I apologize for the background noise. And again, as Shane said, I am not speaking certainly on behalf of the accused or on behalf of their legal teams in any way, but within my role as part of the Jews Say No to Genocide Coalition. But I do want to note that just an hour after the press conference that we held last week, when hundreds of Jewish people and allies gathered right back at that Indigo bookstore and held up replica posters of the same ones that had allegedly been put up by the Indigo, it was coincidentally just an hour later that in fact a new charge had been added to the existing conspiracy and mischief charges that were against those 11 peace activists in Toronto. This was a criminal harassment charge. And I just want to say, and again, I'm not speaking on behalf of these legal cases, but that Heather Reisman, frankly, one of the richest people in Canada, would have to claim that she fears for her life or for her safety for that type of charge to be laid. And again, this is all because of alleged posters and washable red paint outside of their flagship store on Bloor Street. And I don't think I need to remind this audience that the tactic of red paint is one that's been used for over half a century in anti-war movements. This is not something that was newly invented specifically to highlight Heather Reisman's complicity. And so we as Juicy No to Genocide continue to highlight that we feel that Heather Reisman here is attacking basically one of the most basic charter rights of free speech, of political protest. And I think it's important to remember that charges like these, there's no reason to assume that they will lead to conviction, that they will proceed in the courts. What we know is that these are charges that have been laid right now. And as we've discussed throughout this webinar, there are political reasons for this, for these efforts to silence and to create a chilling effect on Palestine liberation movements.
Thank you, Rachel. Does anyone else want to comment on that specifically? All right, thank you. We have a question in the chat around BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, and whether it is a fundamentally correct tactic and whether it is effective to roll back Israel's colonization of Palestine. Maybe I'll ask Khaled.
Well, you know, boycotting an apartheid regime is nothing new. You know, it started with South Africa, and it took time, but it was successful in the end, because in the end, it had an economic effect on South African government, and they realized that they had to change their policies. Now, in the case of Israel, it's not going as fast. For the simple reason is because Israel has been successful so far to convince major Western countries that any criticism of Israel is really based on hatred of Jews. And European countries had this guilt from what they caused to European Jews, because that's where the European Jews suffered the most, where Christian Europe, and I'm speaking as a Christian Europe was really the one who inflicted all these massacres on European Jewry. And they try to make up for that now by forgiving Israel's crimes, because Israel defines itself as a Jewish state. But Israel is not a Jewish state, it is an apartheid state. There's a difference. The same thing with South Africa. We did not say South Africa is a white state. We said it was an apartheid state. And people were fighting not whites, they were fighting apartheid. You know, so it's hard to understand why it takes so long for people in the West to make this equal comparison. You know, you're fighting Israel not because the majority of the population of Israel are Jewish, it's because the policies of that state are racist and discriminatory. So it's working now, but I think these few months, you know, the popular support that came out across the world, you know, made people more aware of what the confrontation that's taking place in Palestine. It's a confrontation between an oppressor, a racist oppressor, and an oppressed occupied people who was asking for equality in their homeland. And I just read recently a figure which I hope is correct, that McDonald's has lost $11 billion worth of purchases because of the boycott that's targeting it. So it's working, at least in this case. I don't know if it's working in other cases, but it seems people are targeting now places or companies which deal with Israel, like Nova Scotia, for example. Recently, there was an event hosted by them where people came and disrupted the meeting, and even one of the people who was given an award, the author, attacked the investments that Nova Scotia has made in Israel. So these things are coming out. There's action taking place. It's taking longer than in the case of South Africa because, as I said, people have still, the institutions in Canada and in Western countries have still not grasped the importance of boycott to change a system, an apartheid system. It's not to get rid of whites in South Africa or to get rid of Jews in Palestine. It's really to change an apartheid system, a racist system, which would be what we Canadians keep talking about. We keep talking about equality in our charter, equality based on religion, ethnicity, racism, gender, political opinion, and yet our institutions and our government and even our media still cannot make this clear distinction that this is a fight against an apartheid system.
Thank you, Khaled. We have a question about sort of international policy. Someone is asking, saying some have suggested asking countries that have been critical of Israel's genocidal bombardment of Gaza to enact the genocide conventions. Is this an angle to try and up the pressure, they ask? Maybe Shane, maybe if you want to take that very briefly.
Yeah, I can speak to that quite briefly. Canada is a contracting party, as it's known, to the Genocide Convention. And under Article 1 of the Genocide Convention, it has an obligation to do everything in its power to prevent genocide. But it can't even seem to find the word itself. We look at what Melanie Joly has said, or more importantly, what she has not said. We look at what Justin Trudeau has said, or again, more importantly, has not said. They refuse to use the language. They refuse to call it what it is. They refuse to use the word genocide, ethnic cleansing, war crimes even. A ceasefire, the most basic, simple realities they refuse to acknowledge. So yes, that is a possibility. But I think we need to start looking outside the borders of Canada, because we certainly can't rely on officials here to do the right thing. We need to look to the world more broadly while continuing to put pressure on the Canadian state.
Yeah, I speak to this point as well, Bianca. Thank you.
Yes.
I won't speak specifically to that element of international law, but I also want to highlight that Canada is a signatory, for example, to the Arms Trade Treaty, which stresses the importance of respecting international humanitarian law, human rights, regulating the global arms trade in that context. And I'm just going to pull it up, Article 6.3 specifically prohibits arms transfers by state parties if they know those arms could be used in genocide or crimes against humanity or grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions, which would include, for example, attacks directed against civilians or other war crimes. Clearly, there's ample evidence before us that arms are currently being used by Israel in precisely many of these ways, and that's one reason why we join many allies across the country in demanding an immediate arms embargo, and that Canada stop arming Israel, and that Canada respect not just international ideals, but ones that have been written into Canadian law at this point, around not exporting weapons to a state that is using them in exactly these horrific ways. I'll drop yet another link in the chat for worldbeyondwar.org/Canada Stop Arming Israel, where we have laid out some of this information. And we've also, with the support of other groups in hosting this webinar, mapped out arms factories across the country that are involved in arming the Israeli state, and where people across the country are mobilizing to say, look, if the Canadian state is not going to fill its
its legal and moral duty to implement an immediate arms embargo on Israel, then we're going to interrupt the operations of these weapons factories ourselves.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm going to ask the next two questions maybe together so that whoever wants to take either can go ahead and do so. Someone wants to know how MPs can be so unrepresentative of their constituents. And another person wants to know whether our panelists feel like the Canadian government has been pressured by the US government to take the stance that they have. Would anyone like to answer either of those questions?
Well, I'll talk about the Canadian government. It's true, Canada depends, a lot. The economy of Canada depends a lot on its trade with the United States. So the United States can put pressure on Canada, but it doesn't explain why Justin Trudeau is caving in all the time, because his father didn't always listen to the Americans. Chrétien also didn't always listen to the Americans, and yet Justin has been following the US at the UN at least, on all resolutions which are for Palestinian rights. Canada has been voting against them, following the US in most of them. So that change took effect from the time of Harper, but it continued with Justin Trudeau, unfortunately. So he appears to be either a weak prime minister, or he lacks information and knowledge about what's happening in the world. So that's unfortunate.
Thank you, Khaled. So the final question that I have, which actually I'll pose to a number of you, is how can people in the audience who want to help with the various things that are going on do so? And maybe first I'll ask Mohammed, how can people in Canada, people watching this webinar, people we're going to hopefully amplify this message to, what can they do to help advance the work of Youth of Sumud, defund racism, and the Palestinian struggle more broadly?
I mean, what we have called for, like, people how to support the Palestinian resilience on the ground. I mean, it's not just the Canadian. I mean, it's like all the people who's like hearing us around the world. So the main thing that what we have during our experience, what I can tell you is on what can help us mainly on the ground is the presence of the international the international attention or presence in the area, in every area in the West Bank or in Gaza, because mainly now Israel is targeting the internationals and sometimes banned them. I have many international friends who got banned. Why? Just because they were effectively on the ground and showing the reality about what's going on. So they were banned for 10 years. So I mean, the international presence here, at least see, it was I don't know how to say it, but it can calm some of the violations that Israel committing against us. So at least they show some of the kindness in the face of the international people. So also it's important to stand with the people, because the people here sometimes feel themselves that they are alone, but this is something that the world should tell the people, that they are not alone. I mean, to give them hope to continue their resistance. I mean, the people here are really strong to face all of the policies that they faced by the occupation, from apartheid and ethnic cleansing and the eviction and the terrorization. So I mean, you can also help by sharing, I mean, on the social media, bring awareness. I mean, what you can do to help, I mean, do this is what I can say for you.
Thank you, Mohammed.
And also,
yeah.
I think one last thing, sorry, Khaled. Just one last thing, that we have started also a campaign called Defend the Defenders, was the the human rights activists who's like us as a group, or other like groups in the West Bank who's like fighting for the rights of the Palestinian, fighting for the justice, fighting for ending the occupation, to just defend like how like if we can provide an international protection for them. Because for me personally, like in August I have been arrested like around 3 times in 2 weeks. For what? For no reason. They kidnapped me once, like they were like terrorizing me, threatening me, and just in order to stop my activism and my work. So like they were charging me sometime with more, like trying to drive on soldiers, but all of this was a fabrication in order to give me some charges to jail me for like around 10 years or above. So I mean, there's no international protection for the people here. Like I mean, the activists, they are the main people who's like, when there is something happen like a demolition homes or some attacks from the settler on the people, I mean the activists was the first people who can just go there and try to do something to divide, like to not like happen, or to prevent everything happens. Or even I mean, we are the people who's facing the occupation by like getting attacks or something like that. So I mean, this like also what you can help in order to bring some to support the Palestinian struggle on the ground.
Yeah, I would like to also speak as a Canadian Palestinian. The way, you know, the way the Israel lobby has portrayed this whole issue is that it is a conflict between Muslims and Jews, which is completely false. And the reason they use that tactic, because they think that they can then get support from Christians, you know, who, especially when you have these evangelical Christians who are very closely supporting the concept that Armageddon will take place and then Jesus will appear, and the surviving Jews will adopt Christianity this time, which they didn't do the first time when Jesus appeared. So this is false. It's not a conflict between Christians and Muslims. And I'm speaking as a Christian who was evicted in 1948 from Haifa, which had a population of 70,000 Arabs and only 2,000 remain. And I have not been allowed since then to return, even simply because I am a Christian Palestinian Arab. I do not fit the definition of the laws of Israel, which says the right of return applies only to somebody who is Jewish by religion. So this is what the conflict is about. I think if people in Canada understand that this is a conflict between an oppressed population, indigenous oppressed population, denied, you know, systemic rights, you know, in every way, in where you live, residence, the amount of money the municipality gets, the right of return, the right of family reunification. I mean, a Palestinian Christian or Muslim, if he marries a Palestinian from outside of Israel, he cannot reunite with his spouse or spouse. So these are, and also land. The land Israel says now, this land belongs, this is the land of the Jewish people, which is a racist concept. Land does not belong to people based on their religion. You know, so all of these things, when people in Canada start understanding them, they can answer their MP, or they can pressure their MP and say, what you are doing, or we want you to take this position now, because what is happening there is a violation of basic humanitarian and international law, and violates all Canadian law and all Canadian policies. So when people realize what this conflict is, what's confrontation between an oppressed people and an oppressor, and they will then be ready, willing to come out and explain and speak out. Because now most Canadians, I don't know if it's most, but many Canadians think that it's a conflict between Muslims and Jews, And well, Muslims, you know, we don't know much about Muslims, but we know Jews, so we will side with Jews, you know, which is unfortunate because that's not what it is. It's a conflict between racism and equality, between, you know, indigenous Palestinians and an apartheid settler colonial system which wants to ethnically cleanse or keep under subordination a majority of the population, because 51% of the population between the river and the sea are really now Palestinian Arabs. 51%. We are the majority in there, and yet most of them don't have any human or civil rights or national rights for sure. And the 2 million who are citizens of Israel have 38 laws discriminating against them in many aspects of their life. So any Canadian who understands that will I'm sure, will stand up with the Palestinian rights for freedom, equality, and justice, and the right of return.
Thank you, Khaled. Shane, Rachel, are there any other ways that you'd like to highlight very briefly how people can support the CRA complaint against HESEG, and also how people can support the activists facing repression?
Yeah, I can speak briefly. I mean, I want to echo something that was said and that connects to the last question as well. Is sure, undoubtedly Canada is facing pressure from the US, as is every country on earth, but this is a Canadian struggle because Canada has its own unique and very important relationship with Israel. And I mean, one need only look at the memorandum of understanding the strategic partnership between Canada and Israel, which specifically commits Canada to military, police, intelligence, border security, public safety cooperation with Israeli counterparts. Like, this is deeply embedded in Canadian law and trade negotiations and agreements right now. So this is a Canadian struggle. And I feel an enormous amount of privilege to actually be an anti-war organizer as my job. And I guess one thing I want to say from that viewpoint is what I have been seeing across Canada over the past 2 months is deeply unprecedented. There have been many, many dozens of die-ins, sit-ins, night marches, vigils, rallies of tens of thousands every single weekend in all the major cities across Canada, dozens of weapons blockades, legal challenges, people following the money, which of course is what this webinar is about, whether we're talking about HESEG and the CRA or whether we're talking about pension plans and banks. There's been huge campaigns targeting Scotiabank for its funding to the military industrial complex in Israel, people putting tons of direct pressure within the Canadian bureaucracy. December 18th coming up is a major national day of action targeting members of parliament in every riding across the country. People are taking action from their own communities and positions in a way that I've never seen before. I mean, I've talked here about Jews who know to genocide, but there's incredible work within every religious community in Canada right now, within labor, within children. There have been dozens of high school walkouts just within Toronto in the past 3 weeks. Writers and artists are mobilizing. I don't want us to think that what we're doing is not working because the bombs have not stopped falling. Unfortunately, that it doesn't always work to directly end the violence we're seeing. And that doesn't mean what we're doing is not having a huge impact. So in addition to all of the important ways that have come up on this webinar to directly follow the money and to directly support the people being criminalized, and please do donate to their legal defense fund, because unfortunately they do need money to defend themselves in court. But in addition to that, I think the most important continued support of those being criminalized is to keep up the resistance across Canada, to keep up the pressure. The weather's getting cold. The violence in Gaza is horrific and heart and brain numbing to witness. But what we're doing is having an impact and is deeply important and unprecedented in what I can see in Canada. And so I would encourage people to keep doing all of those things that have been happening over the past few months.
Thank you, Rachel. Shane?
Yeah, I can't really say it better than Rachel has. I would just add perhaps for people to stay tuned. There is going to be more information coming out about a formal complaint in relation to HESEG. And I would also just add as well, keep in mind, it's not lawyers leading, this struggle and these solidarity movements. Our role is to support the masses when they organize, right? So I would just encourage people to educate, organize, mobilize, and apply as much pressure as possible on the state. And that happens in the streets with community organizations that are organizing. So please get out and keep that pressure on.
Wonderful note to end on. It's been amazing to hear from all of you. These are truly unprecedented times, as Rachel highlighted. Please heed the words of both Mohammed and Khaled and take action in any way that you can. Continue to take action, as Rachel had mentioned. Let's keep going. Pressure your elected officials to call for a ceasefire. Find out how you can be active in your community. Support those who do speak out. Support those who are criminalized. Support the fund. The link is in the chat. Write to the CRA. Send those letters. They are having an impact. Stay informed. Stay engaged. Go to the demos. Post on your social media if you can. Show your solidarity for Palestine amidst this tremendous repression and unspeakable violence that we are witnessing. Thanks to Just Peace Advocates, thanks to Paju, Defund Racism, Youth of Samud, thanks to Karen for your help behind the scenes, thanks to Shane for your incredible lawyering, and to all of our speakers, Rachel, Khaled, Mohammed, for your tremendous activism, and for everyone at home for tuning in and for engaging. So solidarity with the Peace 11 as well, just part of what instigated this. Free Palestine, stop the killing, justice for Gaza. Good afternoon, everyone. Peace.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent moderator.